in your grave. No more women will you crave. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you.
And that is the theme music, I believe, or the opening music for Death by Lightning, which is a 4-part Netflix series about James Garfield and his assassin, Charles Guiteau. This is The Nose, and we are excited to be here today talking about this and other topics as well. David Edelstein is America's greatest living film critic. Tracy Wu Fastenberg, Associate Vice President for Development at Connecticut Children. Bill Yousman, Professor of Media Studies at Sacred Heart University. Two of them are here in the studio with me. David is back in Brooklyn, and we will indeed talk about Death by Lightning. This stars Michael Shannon as James Garfield and Matthew McFadden as Guiteau. Let's hear just a little bit from the series. This is going to be, you're going to hear Nick Offerman as Chester Arthur, Bradley Whitford as James Blade. Totally different from all the other roles that Bradley Whitford plays. Just kidding. He always sounds like he went to Wesleyan no matter who he's playing. Matthew McFadden as Charles Guiteau. Here we go, A1.
That Maine special election you have next week is far from a sure thing, I hear. If the governorship goes to the Democrats, we're screwed in November. My friends tell me that Hancock's camp gains ground in New England.
Mr. Arthur, I am New England. The Northeast will come in solid. I'd stake my career on that. No, the matter at hand is our game in New York.
If I may, I was just walking by and I couldn't help but listen in. Have you tried an appeal to rank and file donors? Garfield is the people's candidate, and he gives voice to the proletariat class. And if every worker in America were compelled to chip in a dime, you'd easily make up the deficit and empower a whole new voting bloc.
Who is this man? What is he doing here? Why is he still talking?
Oh, I'm a friend of Senator Blaine's. I was just in the area, and I figured I'd swing by and check on the status of my speech.
Your what?
My speech, the stump speech that I intend to give in October at the rally. You very kindly offered to take a look.
Did I?
All right, and then we should say that Bradley Whitford's playing James Blaine, who ends up being Secretary of State for Garfield. So, David Edelstein, there was just no question that we were going to talk about this series, partly because,
of course,
a year ago or so, you and I were sitting in a coffee shop near Union Square, and you were telling me all about Chester A. Arthur, and we wound up doing a whole show together about Chester A. Arthur.
I was telling you about Scott Greenberger's book, The Unexpected President, which is an absolutely wonderful biography, and I was so glad that you took the ball there.
Yeah, so we wound up doing a whole episode with David Edelstein and Scott Greenberger, and somebody else too. But anyway, so we approached this kind of from, this is sort of the prequel. And so I'm wondering just overall, and one day's thing is it's 4 episodes, so this is something you can actually get through in a week. But David, I'm wondering how you feel about it.
Oh, boy. Well, look, I'm very grateful. It's a story most Americans have forgotten, which we're reminded of by Mrs. Garfield, Crete, in the 2020 hindsight penultimate scene, I guess it was. Garfield was shot 3 months into his term by Charles Guiteau. We know popularly as a disappointed office seeker. I believe that's what it says in all the history books. But here, Michael McFadden plays him as a raging nutcase with a savior complex. My problems with, I know a lot of people love this movie. I believe my fellow nosers like it very much too. My problem is that every single scene in this 4-hour miniseries demonstrates Garfield's nobility and moral decency. He's sort of Lincoln light, L-I-T-E. And every other scene establishes Guiteau as a desperately lying lunatic in the manner of Rupert Pupkin in The King of Comedy, or Joaquin Phoenix in Joker.
He is he's very Pupkin-like. That's a really good analogy.
And that's it. So you have, half of it is hagiography, and half of it is a sort of squirm, psycho black comedy. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. Now, look, the cast is great. I mean, Michael Shannon, I've been a fan of his since I profiled him in New York Magazine as the best actor you've never heard of. So obviously I'm responsible for his great fame. And, obviously he's borne that out. McFadden, we know, is superb. Betty Gilpin, she should be in everything. Shea Wiggum plays Conklin, the sleazy New York politician. Ward Heeler, great. Nick Offerman as Chester Arthur. He's not my Chester Arthur. Perhaps he's not Scott Weinberger's Chester Arthur, but he's damn good. He's hilarious. I just have a problem with how repetitious and how obvious the whole thing is.
But, it is possible that you know too much about this. I know, Wu, you kind of came in this with less. For example, you thought Garfield was a cat.
I kept asking, why doesn't he like Mondays?
Yes, exactly.
Why
and then we found out
lasagna so much.
we found out why he doesn't like Mondays.
That's my wife's joke, actually.
But yeah, I mean, I think spending some time in this period and having super talented people to spend that time with, there's something to be said for it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I came into this with very basic historical knowledge. You know, Garfield had been assassinated. I knew Chester A. Arthur as the guy who signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, so didn't really have the greatest opinion of him.
Exactly. By the way, that gets left out of this movie. That I won't spoil anything, but yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
It's one tiny little bit on a lawn is basically what that is, and then so I had very basic knowledge historically of what it was. So I went in. Not knowing a whole lot, but I do agree that the characters are a little tropey in certain ways, right? Like you've got archetypes of, there's the hero, there's the lunatic, there's the stalwart, the sassy wife type of thing that goes against the grain. There's the everybody sort of fits in a nice little box for a lot of it. And it's not until I went back and watched the first 2 episodes after listening to the Chester A. Arthur episode that I said, okay, there is a little more nuance here. But I did enjoy it, right? I enjoyed the miniseries. I found it entertaining. I found it a little educational, and it made me want to go back and read and research everyone a little bit more. And so I think it does accomplish that as far as bringing somebody's legacy to the forefront and making people interested in a story that otherwise probably would have been lost. So I think it does accomplish that. The performances are great, right? They're all wonderful actors. And so I did enjoy it in that respect. Does it do everybody justice as far as what their legacies are? Probably not, even for somebody who doesn't know all the history. But does it bring about a little bit more than there was? Yes.
I mean, Bill, it raises questions about what anybody's responsibility or obligation is telling a story like this one, too. I mean, I don't think Hamlet is a particularly accurate depiction of politics in Denmark at that time.
What do you mean?
Was you there, Charlie? Was you there?
So, but I don't know. How did you, as a media studies guy, how are you interpreting all that?
Well, probably coming at it more from where Wu was than where David was. I did not know very much about the Garfield short presidency. I do study media, but I do not study media of the 1880s all that much. And, my first reaction was, what is McNichol making me watch now? But
was it your Carolyn Payne impersonation?
She's better at it than I am, and I can't dance. But from the very first moment. So, I mean, I have to say, you had me at Sly and the Family Stone, right? And if you watch it, you'll know what I mean by that. It starts with this very short little prologue, maybe, in 1969, where they discover Guiteau's brain, and somebody goes, who the hell was Charles Guiteau? And Sly and the Family Stone's Everyday People starts playing, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing something different with this. And, a critic for USA Today called it the most fun you'll have on TV this fall, and I thought, it's an assassination. Are we being a little too glib about that?
In which the victim lingers dying for
terribly,
about 45 minutes.
Sepsis, but it grabbed me, and I kind of had this huge smile on my face for much of it. You hear the wit in it from that clip that you all introduced. As David already said, the performances are really great. He's not wrong that, was Garfield really this saint that they depicted him to be? Probably not. But I totally gave myself over to it as a dramatization, as a story, and I was thoroughly captivated by it.
Yeah, and David, I think it is something we struggle with, this question of how much do you have to kind of nail it? And I always feel like it sort of depends also on what the value proposition is. Like, one of the problems with JFK is that Oliver Stone tells you that he is going to tell you the truth that you've never been told before, and then he really doesn't. But I'm not sure the value proposition here is quite the same. They're telling a story.
Since you brought up JFK, I mean, I think that is a really a beautifully evocative portrait of Oliver Stone's chaotic, fevered brain. And, so I would say it has a sort of internal logic and integrity. But whereas this is, I think I would agree that it's a lot of tropes. But sure, yes, it's entertaining. And if I can just get pedantic for a second, I think that it's great to know about this period. Americans don't know much history in general. Many of us don't really know much about what happened after the Civil War and Reconstruction between that and World War I, basically. Yep. And it's a period in which a lot of the ideas that and problems that we're struggling with now, particularly in political corruption, are ongoing or eternal. It seems with this particular faux democracy. And so I think it's a painless history lesson, albeit you do watch a very, very good man dying for 45 minutes. And I recommend it. I only am maybe disappointed because it's not my Chester Arthur.
Right. So, I mean, some of the fun here, too. I'm not sure what this series would have been with maybe B or C level actors here. And some of the fun of this, like Betty Gilpin is Loomis Chaffee graduate. Betty Gilpin is really just fun to watch as Garfield's wife. She steals every scene that she's in. Mm-hmm. She does, as I think McPants was pointing out earlier, just some really subtle face acting. For every line she does, she's got 3 or 4 eyebrow arches to go with it.
Oh yeah, her face is just perfection. I wish that maybe in a couple of work meetings I had her face just to be able to convey sometimes what I was thinking without getting in too much trouble. But
and she can kick ass as an action hero too. If you've seen that movie where she fights Hilary Swank to the death,
she's got a good slap in this one.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah,
she is amazing.
I might be endorsing Glow also at the end of the show today. She does all kinds of violent things there. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, she was fantastic because I think oftentimes the female characters in some of these period pieces, they really have to swing one way or another, and she does fulfill that sort of against the grain sassy thing in a way, but those facial expressions really are absolute gold. And I do like that they developed Molly, the daughter, a little bit too, and so you can see how the daughter follows in the mother's footsteps a little bit too, and so I like that they have that line of continuity too.
Yeah.
But
also,
it was enjoyable.
Nice to see Paula Malcolmson in a smaller role as the sister.
She is always great.
We always we love Malcolmson. No, that's the second segment. Never mind.
She Loomis Chaffee too?
No, she's no. So, and Bill, these are actors chewing scenery, and they're not really being discouraged. I do think Offerman, this is a hard job. Whether it makes David happy or angry, what he's doing is hard. He's tasked with playing Chester Arthur, who comes into the story as kind of a dissipated reprobate and just very much a kingpin of corruption, and he has to transform himself. And there's a lot. The only way that he can do it is through both these very sort of bold strokes, but also a lot of subtlety in the way that he transforms himself.
I think he's going to win an Emmy for this, frankly. I think, obviously, we know that Chester Arthur's process of reformation was longer and more subtle and involved another person altogether, a great character, a single New York woman who became his pen pal once he became president.
Yeah, we didn't have her, yeah.
Yeah, the Chester Arthur story, I maintain, is a great story and a profoundly sad one when you consider the lack of reformation of the current felon in chief.
True, but we want to hear from Bill on this. Okay,
I really also enjoyed Ron Swanson as Chester Arthur. There are some similarities, both in terms of obvious physical appearance, but those transformations as things go on. And you're right, like some of it is so broad that it has to be considered slapstick, really. I don't think that's a criticism. I think that was very much part of the intent of how they were trying to make this an entertaining story. Totally agree. But then you see him wrestling with his own internal demons, including the loss of his wife, and trying to figure out how he's been thrust into this position that he never expected to be a part of, and he just wanted to, as he said, listen to music, fight, and eat sausages, which I was expecting for this episode, but we didn't get to.
Which is also, what J.T. Walsh asked for too. I mean,
but you see it, and you see it especially in the last couple of episodes where I think he becomes much more of a sympathetic character rather than a buffoon.
Let's hear a little bit of those two the sympathetic president and the something of a buffoon as a vice president, just a little bit more from the series. You'll hear Michael Shannon and Nick Offerman. A2, please.
Have you been down to the Capitol lately?
I do my best to avoid that hole at all costs.
Fair enough, except are you aware we currently have a deadlock on the Senate floor? 37-37 split of support. In that rare situation, the vice president is deputized to act as the tie-breaking vote. And in the case of my appointments...
I'm the difference between them being blocked and going through.
Mm-hmm. You have an opportunity now to exhibit genuine leadership.
Come on. I'm no leader. And even if I were, my politics are not your own. Let's not be under any illusions here. I was only ever offered this job as a means of kneecapping Conkling.
You're right. And it was a stunningly stupid calculus. You are without a doubt the least qualified candidate on Earth for this role. And if I had my say, I'd have tapped just about anyone else over you.
So, David, I had a thought that maybe part of the problem with this is it maybe should have been 5 episodes, or to give the Arthur thing a little bit more of a chance to kind of round itself out and be a less abrupt transition. But I also think that when we step back, when future cultural anthropologists look at the streaming era, I think there is sort of a pretty frequent Game of Thrones disease where too many things are left unwrapped up you would think this would be the perfect format so that by the time you get to the final episode, you could just do a final episode that was the culmination of everything. But it seems to me that quite frequently they mismanage the clock on these things. I think they did it here.
Well, I think you mismanaged the clock because you cut the punchline of that whole scene. He says that he would choose anybody else on Earth. Garfield says that to Arthur. But then he says, but I've looked at your past, and I know you were a war hero, and I know you once represented indigent clients, and I know that there's a better man inside there somewhere. And that's our indication at that point that there is potential for Arthur to, if not achieve greatness, then at least to transcend the dung heap of corruption in which he came of age as a politician.
They can't get sued for using too long of a clip. They have to watch that. Watch that IP very, very
There's
careful.
some reason why that clip is short. I don't know why it is. Yeah. I'm also, Wu, I'm wondering what you thought of the character of Roscoe Conkling. This is somebody that I know a little bit about even before my David Edelstein, Chester A. Arthur transformation, partly because I'm just this weird expert on the blizzard of 1888, which is when he died. But it was kind of interesting because Conkling is this gigantic figure in a lot of ways. And Shea Wiggum At some point, Shea Wiggum's going to get to be just Shea Wiggum as opposed to that guy who's in everything, because he is in everything. And he was kind of sort of an interesting choice, too, because if there was one person who could arguably have been larger than life in this, it would be whoever played Roscoe Conkling. I don't know. How did you think that that character worked for you? I
thought he was sort of the perfect villainy type of character, because I was not aware of him as a human being. I'm not aware of the blizzard either, but what a fitting way to go.
You would have been, though, when it was happening.
Yes, it sounds like it, but what a fitting way to go. I feel like he played the perfect sort of conniving puppet master of all of that, even as he was coming on his downfall, right? And so it was fun to watch sort of the trajectory and sort of the machinations behind the scenes too. The way he treated Chester A. Arthur from the beginning to the end. It was fun to see that sort of trajectory, that arc going along the way. And I think the actor was the perfect choice for it, because you could see all of the inner workings and the outer workings at the same time. And the hair was fantastic too. I really just enjoyed watching that kind of happen. And kind of wanted to run a skateboard through it as well.
So Bill Yousman, we should take a moment to talk about Matthew Macfadyen, because I think also one thing that's happened with him is he's gone from being this guy you maybe knew from Mr. Darcy, or maybe you knew him as Tom in Succession, but now I've talked to a number of people who said, I'm watching this series because Matthew Macfadyen is in it and I want to see him in something else. He really has kind of arrived, and I think his presentation here is really, really fascinating.
Can I just say he's not my Mr. Darcy? I gotta.
Who is your Mr. Darcy, though?
It's always going to be Colin. Not you, Colin. The other Colin.
The other one, yeah.
So.
Firth, Colin.
Yes. Yeah, not this Colin. Sorry.
Sorry. It's okay. Oh, it's okay.
No, I loved him in this. I love him, I loved him as Tom on Succession. And there's a lot of similarities between the characters. Again, I don't think that's a criticism. And by the way, as I was kind of like looking some things up, I came across a picture of Charles Guiteau, and I found like this incredible physical resemblance between the two of them. It's like all they had to do was slap that big beard on. But he's so good, he's the textbook definition of a ne'er-do-well. Every time you see him, he looks just like a little dirty and a little wet. And that says so much about the kind of person he is. And yet, at the same time, even though, look, he is a villain of American history, especially when you think about maybe what could have become from a progressive presidency in that era, they managed to bring some empathy for him as well, too. There are moments where you can't help but just feel so bad for his just humiliation after humiliation after humiliation.
He was an Oneida, and nobody would have sex with him. I mean, that's the most embarrassing thing of all.
Was he the first incel?
Yeah, but
that's what I thought.
Good one. Good. All right, we have to stop there. We got a lot of other things to talk about. We're going to take a little break here. We will come back with so much more.
The Lord Look on the bright side, not on the sad side. Inside the bad side, something's good. This is your golden opportunity. You've been a preacher.
Yes, I have.
You've been an author.
Yes, I have.
You've been a killer.
Yes, I have.
You could be an angel.
Yes, I could.
Just wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow they'll all climb aboard. What if you never...
I feel like we should all be out on stage hugging. So we have a two-parter in this segment. The second part is going to be Is the Pope Cinematic? But we're going to start with Saturday Night Live and about impersonations. With us, David Edelstein, America's Greatest Living Film Critic, Tracy Wu Fastenberg, Associate Vice President for Development at Connecticut Children's, Bill Yousman, Professor of Media Studies at Sacred Heart University, and we're going to talk very specifically. There was a piece in The Atlantic about the impact that James Austin Johnson is having with his impersonation of President Trump, particularly in the cold opens of Saturday Night Live, where he often will sort of try to cram a lot of things in that has happened during the week. And we'll hear a little bit of an example of this right here with B1.
Each week, I like to create a big visual that sort of sums up how things are going. Last week, it was the demolishing of the East Wing. This week, it's a medical professional almost dying in my Oval Office at the mere thought of charging less for drugs. Maybe next week, a bald eagle will fall dead out of the sky and splat right on the White House lawn. And by lawn, of course, I mean big outdoor concrete floor. How's he doing back there? More importantly, how's the floor, okay? A guy collapsing in the Oval Office. Who'd have thought it'd be not me? Don't worry, you'll be fine. Dr. Oz is on the case. Anyway, all in all, a great capper to an awesome week, except for election. The Democrats won. The lamestream media called the elections a rebuke of Trump's policies. Joke's on them, they're Stephen Miller's policies. I don't read that stuff. No likey-ready. But our side had some wins this week, too. Supreme Court said we could stop feeding poor people. You can clap for that. Snap! Snap!
So, Bill, the entire business of political impersonations is very fraught. And I always kind of wonder, do they accomplish anything? Do they accomplish even what they might be trying to accomplish? But tell me what you see and hear here with the way that James Austin Johnson is giving us Trump.
Well, there's no question that he does a good job with it. You know, I mean, he really does have the wild, lysergic acid, fraught, can't stay with one thing for more than 2 seconds, ADD kind of approach that he has. He's got the voice, he's got somewhat down, I guess. I have to give a shout out to the makeup people, because when you watch it, I mean, the outfit and the neck, I noticed how they do his neck. And I do think, look, I don't know what kind of actual impact this has in our society or in our politics, but I think it's important to mock, in general, to mock power and to mock this particular person relentlessly over and over and over again, because he is so thin-skinned. And look, I'm just speaking for myself right now. Anything that can happen to irritate him and make him angry, I'm down for.
It's also interesting. I'm fascinated by impersonations. And one thing I was thinking about as Bill was talking too was the difficulty of doing anything with Obama. Because with Obama, what you really kind of had to do, and Key and Peele were the ones who really nailed it down, was suggest that there was something else going on there besides what you saw. Because what you saw was, I don't want to say it was perfection, but there was a smoothness and a projection of calm and no drama, and that's not particularly funny. Whereas, I mean, Trump's giving you a ton of stuff to work with, so they came up with Luther, his anger surrogate. But that's an interesting problem with Trump. Is he's already really bizarre and extreme and exaggerated. So what do you do with the impersonation?
And that is the question, because it's almost like you could just rewatch what's happening in real time, and that in of itself is the comedy right there. Because sometimes you're sitting there going, "Is this real life, or am I watching just some sort of fantasy television right there?" And so for me, this doesn't really do it. It's not something that I go out of my way to watch. If anything, I actually kind of avoid it. I haven't watched SNL in a very, very long time. Maybe Weekend Update. That's about it. So these don't have any particular impact on me. I do understand that people appreciate it and then do need that sort of outlet to be able to have something to laugh at, to find some sort of outlet. But it doesn't do it for me. So that's sort of where I leave it, is meh.
Yeah, David, I'm not sure I entirely agreed with the Atlantic piece. I mean, part of the argument of that by that writer, Eric Adams, but not that Eric Adams. Eric with a K, Adams.
Unfortunately.
was that, well, we're dealing with a fire hose here. We're dealing with a president who every week is just spewing a lot of stuff at us, flooding the zone, pick whatever terminology you want. So what do you do back? And that Johnson has started to do this same kind of stream of consciousness thing where he'll talk about 10 or 11 different things that happened. But I don't know what that is necessarily supposed to accomplish.
I think he comes off as a lot more self-possessed than Trump actually is. For all his wandering lunacy, he seems a lot more forthright and certain of what he's saying. Whereas Trump, it just comes out of the ether. I don't think he quite catches it. Although I laugh a lot. There was particularly a great joke about Ozempic and constipation that made me laugh very hard in this particular one. I think that the Obama, you mentioned Obama. There was a satirical point to the Obama portrait, and that is Obama being biracial. Really, in a very conscious and legalistic way, modeled himself on Mr. Spock, on Leonard Nimoy's Mr. Spock. He has said this, and you could actually make fun of his judiciousness. That was how he defined himself, and there was a real satiric point to that, and it sometimes kept him from doing the right thing because he was so damn judicious. With Trump, I don't know that this catches the man. I mean, it's possible, as you've suggested, that no one can. I mean, he's such a caricature. He's such a cartoon. He's turned himself into such a cartoon that, maybe it's beyond satire. Although, I do think that there is a level of mendacity in there of, as his own niece said, he is a man, the only man I've ever met without a single redeeming quality. And I think I almost find this guy too likable and too certain of his direction.
Yeah. This also, Bill, gave me a moment to think a little bit in maybe a sort of a media studies way about how impersonations work. And they're not all created equal. So James Austin Johnson, he's in the impersonation business. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. Whereas Jon Stewart, who does a devastating Chuck Schumer. Oh, I was like, I peeked at your notes or something?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Colin is cheating on my exam, Tracy.
At least he didn't chat
Which,
GPT
by the way,
it.
a Gentile cannot do this impersonation. but Stewart just destroys
Take it away, David.
Schumer when he does it. But he's not in the impersonation business. Jon Stewart is telling us a story, his whole story about what happened last week or what's going on right now. And every once in a while to do it, he'll do a Schumer, or he used to do a Mitch McConnell and Joe Lieberman as cartoon characters. Lieberman was Droopy Dog. He's not in the impersonation business. They just help tell the story. And in a way, I think that's maybe a better way to tell a story.
Oh, 100. You just did. I mean, speaking of Spock.
I stole everything you were going to say?
No, you just did a Vulcan mind meld with me. So I'm just going to exit. But no, I had written down that I don't enjoy the James Weldon Johnson. Did I get his name
James
right?
Austin Johnson.
James Austin. Who's James Weldon Johnson? Like it's an American author, right?
Something like that.
I don't enjoy the Johnson as much as I enjoy the Stewart bits that actually I think are more pointed and funnier. And I had mentioned, he'll slip into Schumer just for a minute or two, not even that long. And it's so good and it's so spot on. And I just think that, at least from my sensibility, that's more appealing to me. I thought this past Monday, for example, Stewart did a thing on the 7 Dems who caved on the government shutdown. And he made these two great comparisons. He compared them to the New York Giants, which I thought was very, very funny. And then he compared the Dems to the kids who Tom Sawyer fooled into painting the fence for him. I just thought I just find that kind of thing that he's doing sharper and a little bit more incisive and maybe even a little bit more impactful than what is, just kind of more of a, as you say, just an impression.
We probably should switch gears here a little bit. The other thing we wanted to talk about, although he's not really the first pope to kind of get into this business, Pope Leo this week announced his 4 favorite movies ahead of a Vatican event about movies. And we actually can hear Pope Leo XIV say exactly what his favorite 4 movies are. B2, please.
My 4 favorite films: It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart from 1946, The Sound of Music from 1965 with Julie Andrews, Ordinary People, the year was 1980, the stars were Donald Sutherland and Mary Tyler Moore, La Vita è Bella, 1997, Roberto Benigni.
All right, so we should go to America's greatest living film critic first here. David, what do you have to say about the Pope and his tastes?
Oh, I'm glad you can't see the obscene gesture I'm making. Well, first of all, I want to give props because it's very rare that you will find the head of the Catholic Church giving credit to a movie in which the savior is a Jewish psychiatrist. It really is. I mean, the movie is about WASP repression and the toll that it takes on a boy and what frees.
And that Sound of Music that we're talking about. You should see Ordinary People.
Anyway, what frees him is, the magic of Sigmund Freud and Judd Hirsch, and I think it's wonderful that he would credit our culture with restoring the sanity of some of the people that his church has driven mad. Life is beautiful. Makes me want to vomit. So I don't really know what. I don't really know what I can say, but to me, it's so ghastly that I think I maybe know why a healer, why somebody who's charged with being a spiritual healer would cite it, because it is about a completely evil, terrible world, and a father who is doing everything to, as someone once sang, accentuate the positive, to the point of, distorting reality for the sake of the perpetuation of the species. I don't happen to agree with that particular philosophy, but I would see how in his boat, and as has been pointed out by smarter people than I am, I don't think he was going to cite maybe Spotlight or some of the other films that
Conclave. He almost put Conclave. I really kind of like Conclave. So
anyway, whatever. I mean, and It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, whatever.
Wu, how about you?
What else was he going to put on his list? Okay, Ordinary People. That one actually, I'm like, oh, he's edgy. But
it's the only interesting choice.
A man for all seasons.
Sound of Music. That's a gimme, right? Like if you're Catholic, you've got to put the musical with the nun. But I don't even know if it was necessary that he put his movies out there at all, because they're going to get picked apart anyway. I agree with the sentiments of what we were discussing as far as It's a Wonderful Life and Love You, Bella. It just they were unnecessary. They just it's a little trite.
She's a rebellious nun. To be fair,
well, she is a rebellious nun.
Underneath her wimple, she has
curlers in her hair. Yeah. Yes, but I guess it just they were unsurprising, except for the one. And I guess he had to throw us a curveball, being a fan of baseball. But I think that they were predictable, and there's not a whole lot to say about them. Maybe he could have put 10 Commandments on there, and then really could have rounded it out there. But beyond that,
okay, Bill,
what else we got?
Well, David and I went to the same shul, and so is there a Jewish person alive who doesn't despise Life is Beautiful? Like, I'd really like to know that. I just loathe it. And I also really, really love Ordinary People. I loved both the film and the novel. I think it's got everything that I'm here for, family trauma. It was an interesting choice. And what it makes me wonder is like, okay, we recognize that this is a PR exercise. I get it. And he's constrained. I'd like to know what his real list
would be interesting to know.
Because
I
that
do want to
hints
say,
at that.
you know, I mean,
Also, She-Wolf of the SS, I imagine. Is
no, probably not. So, you know, I also worship Judd Hirsch in that movie, and I think all the time of that moment where he says to Donald Sutherland's character, "So you think of yourself as a lucky man." That is always, and his delivery on it is terrific. But to me, the more radical part of this is divorce. This movie ends with a divorce, which everybody would agree is necessary. Pre-Francis, so pre the predecessor of Leo, you couldn't have put this on any kind of Catholic list.
Interesting.
You know, divorce was off the table.
And suicide, right? It
yeah.
talks about suicide as well, which is not something you talk about in Catholic Church.
I don't think it endorses suicide.
No, but it
kind of
addresses it.
endorses. It kind of endorses a divorce at the end.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Sure, that's true.
And that is pretty radical. I will also say that JP2 also got very interested in movies, and they have a much longer list, which includes a movie that I would have hoped that a Pope would put on, even though it's not about Catholics, is Chariots of Fire, because it's such an interesting movie about religion and religion in public situations and how people kind of incorporated religious thinking into secular decisions. And I don't know, it's also just one of my favorite movies. Anyway, we have to
Another Mighty Jew, too.
There you go, Abrams. We'll take a little break. We'll come back. We're going to make some recommendations.
The Pope. The Pope. This is the Pope. The Pope. You can be the president. I'd rather be the Pope.
So Dylan Reyes is off today. That means we get to have the Jedi Master himself, Obi-Wan. Eugene Amatruda is the technical producer today. Jonathan McPants is producing the episode. I'm not actually sure who's doing what in there, but people are doing things in there. That's the main thing. Maybe Jonathan McPants is doing everything at this point. I can't really tell. I can't see. Okay, so he is. So we're going to make some recommendations here at the end of the nose. Bill Yousman, why don't you get us started?
So you mentioned thinking about Garfield as a prequel to the Chester Arthur stuff. I'm going to offer a prequel to Garfield, but in the form of a really, really foundational nonfiction sociological study by W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Reconstruction in America, an essay toward a history of the part which black folk played in the attempt to reconstruct democracy in America, 1860 to 1880, just before the Garfield presidency. It was a groundbreaking book that turned sort of the whole field of the history of that era upside down in his focus on the role that African Americans played in that era and the promise that it held, which was then destroyed by the destruction of Reconstruction. So it's a phenomenal piece of work. Or for something lighter about political intrigue and double dealing, season 3 of The Diplomat on Netflix, I think is just so much fun. It's just as much about the complexity of marriage as it is about politics. And I think I stole Tracy's, but you can
That's okay. We can talk about
that.
Because another thing we find out there is that the president of the United States is married to James S. Blaine, which is very complicated.
I
you
know.
merge those two properties together. But yeah, Tracy Wu Fastenberg, you have the floor, unless you messed everything up.
As I'm waving my arms wildly,
Well,
you
Colin
took
stole from
mine.
me a little earlier,
so we're just
so-
passing
Yeah,
notes
yeah,
back
that's
and forth here. No, I second the season 3 of Diplomat because I really enjoyed that. And after finding season 2, I sort of dipped off a little bit there, but season 3 really picked up for me, so I will second that.
And I think that they're doing I think we sometimes despair about the fact that we don't have these kind of Grant and Hepburn, either one of the Hepburn
so much
things.
like that.
But this is a Grant and Hepburn
And that's
thing.
the best part of it.
I mean, Rufus Sewell is doing his best Cary Grant, and I don't know. I think she's more Catherine than Audrey, but it's really a terrific comedy as well as this kind of political thriller.
Oh, yeah. Very much enjoying that. And every November, because it's my birthday and I share that with Louisa May Alcott, I reread Little Women. So for decades and decades now. So I am going to recommend just finding that book that you love that maybe reminds you of childhood, maybe a little wholesome. I think we can all use it at this time. So maybe seek that out as it gets colder and reread something that you love from your childhood.
Happy birthday.
Yes,
Oh,
happy
thank
birthday.
you.
And thank you for not mentioning pumpkin spice.
That season is over. We are into peppermint mocha, man.
So hard to
I
keep
like
track.
that too.
It's hard to keep track of all these abominations. And so, David Edelstein, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, I want to go back to something that Bill said because I think it's really important when you asked about what the impact of the Saturday Night Live skits would be, what political impact it would have. I don't know, but I do know that this is no matter what you think of this particular presidential administration, it goes into the gutter, name calling, real juvenile stuff that you and I think one of the reasons Gavin Newsom has been effective is that he gets down on their sort of playground toilet level. Even more so is probably my favorite television show of all time, which is apologies to The Sopranos and The Wire and Breaking Bad, which is South Park. The South Park has gotten so crude and so low, in attacking this president that he really can't even acknowledge it without somehow or other throwing a spotlight on it. It is so wonderful that no other, I don't think any other president, this would work as well. Only one who believes in this kind of ridicule in this kind of language could actually be affected by something this juvenile. It's not, and this smutty and filthy. And it's not. I think it's not South Park at its best, but it is South Park at its most sort of screamingly effective. And so I commend it to everyone. The other thing I just want to say is go back and read Scott Greenberger's book on Chester Arthur, if you haven't. It's a marvelous biography. The one thing about it is that Nick Offerman is great as a sort of colorful reprobate. The real Chester Arthur was a little bit more faceless. He was a hack. He was a political hack, a sleazy political hack. And I think the book is wonderful in showing how even the conscience of a man as insulated as that can be pricked and stirred to do the right thing. Now, he very reluctantly signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, and that will be a blot on his character forever. But it's it's a wonderful book, and I'd like to see it get more attention than it did.
All right, very quickly here at the end, I was just going to say that tomorrow there is this World of Cinema event at the Papal Residence, and Judd Apatow and Kate Blanchett and Dave Franco and Spike Lee and a whole bunch of people are going to be there. One of them is Alison Brie. Alison Brie and Betty Gilpin, who we were celebrating in the first segment, did an amazing series called Glow, Glamorous Ladies of Wrestling, also with Mark Maron in a tremendous performance. And I think it's one of those things that people don't watch because they think they wouldn't like the content. Mm-hmm. It's like people who won't watch Friday Night Lights because it's about football. Mm-hmm. This is not, that should not deter you. This is really a terrific series. The character studies are great. Brie is amazing, and so is Gilpin. It's really worth watching. And thank you so much for listening today. We'll bring up the music. We'll say goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Talk about Torrington, Vernon, Danbury, Waterbury, Alderberry, Woodbury, hitting on New Britain, Vernon, I already said that one, Avon, Farmington, yeah.